Hi, everybody. I'm Crawford McCarty, Senior Director of Marketing here at Verison, and I want to welcome you to this webinar presentation of our monthly Ask the Expert series. Today's iteration, how to evolve your supply chain from project-based to sustainability. One quick note, there will be an audience Q&A session at the end of this presentation. We encourage you to submit your questions at any time throughout this discussion using the QA button at the bottom of your screen. Now, for decades, supply chain professionals and industry experts have been approaching their supply chain challenges with a project-based mindset. It makes sense, as supply chain professionals tend to be analytics-driven and projects are clear and concise with how and when you take action. The issues arise when organizations face complex problems using data-first projects and end with results that are outdated almost immediately upon completion. Today, we're going to explore why approaching materials data with a sustainable mindset allows organizations to avoid this data half-life and work towards a truly long-term solution. Let's start with introducing the speakers. Josh Ferguson, the Senior Manager of Product and Content at Verison. Josh is focused on creating thought leadership assets to help global organizations streamline their materials management strategy. Mary Kate Love, the Director of Go-to-Market Strategy and Execution at Verison. Mary Kate is focused on shaping the vision of the future state on how supply chain optimization ties in. So let's kick this off with a question for Josh. Josh, talk to me about the annual State of the Supply Chain Survey. For those that don't know, this is Verison's largest study released annually and helps identify what the industry is doing, what they're focused on, and where they're correcting. Josh, what are the top 3 priorities you're seeing with supply chain experts?
Yeah, thanks, Crawford. As Crawford mentioned, our annual State of the Supply Chain or Supply Management Survey has just completed running. We've got all the results in, and we've got some interesting stuff that came through from everyone that participated in it. So top 3 projects, right? So some of these will be surprising, some of them will not be. Number one, or not the number one, but one of the top priorities was reducing the cost to serve. Right, this is not particularly surprising, right? Companies have been trying to do this for quite some time, particularly as the cost to serve has gotten more and more expensive as customer expectations have continued to rise over the years. Right? So that is definitely something that people are focusing on. Number 2, this was one that was quite interesting, is reducing unplanned downtime, right? But it kind of makes sense if you think about, the previous one, right? So fulfilling the customer promise, you can't do that if lines aren't running, right? You got to be able to meet those SLAs, not to mention all the costs that accrue if a production line goes down. You're talking about losing thousands of dollars every minute that a line is down. So, it's not surprising that that is pretty high on the list. However, number one priority for organizations over the next 12 months is reducing their material supply risk. So that means ensuring that plants have all the critical parts that they have on hand, that they need, having all those on hand in order to keep those lines running so you can A, meet those SLAs, and B, fulfill that customer promise.
Love it, Josh. Yeah, thank you. It's interesting because, we were talking about these results, and for everyone on the line, we'll be releasing the survey, as part of our typical thought leadership deployment, and everyone attending today's webinar will be getting a copy. One of the things, Josh, that you and I were talking about was this one initiative that every major organization has. And Mary Kate, I know you know a lot about this, given your background in supply chain. Can you give me a little bit of background on what the one initiative is for anyone that may not be familiar?
Yeah, so when we are talking about the one initiative, we're talking about really a way to centralize your supply chain. So putting all of your systems together, right? Making sure your data across multiple locations matches, makes sense. And a lot of the customers we work with, and, a lot of large manufacturers have grown through mergers and acquisitions. And the one initiative is somewhat daunting, right? Because, in the case that I was at a previous company, we were trying to go down from 72 systems to 12. And that was an extremely large project that, let's be honest, not a lot of people wanted to work on. But we knew that we kind of needed to do this in order to go through some of the priorities that Josh actually stated. So it's really kind of the impetus behind all of the other supply chain initiatives going on at any given organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's one of those things too where you talk about 72 systems down to 12. That's kind of at the core of why this shouldn't be a project focused system, right?
Totally.
When you got 72 systems, I mean, that's really not insane for a company as large as most Fortune 500 manufacturers, right. but you simply can't project 72 systems, right? That's where the key of coming down to 12 is. So let's talk about why project-based kind of started. Josh, give me a little bit of background here on supply chain professionals. Why do they approach solving problems this way?
Well, I think you hit it right on the head, like in the intro, right? So we're analytical minded people. People just in general like project-based mentality, right? It's got a defined timeline. It looks like something that, it's like, all right, it's in this box. It's on my list. If I can just get it done, check it off, it's done. I can show the improvement. Boom, look at this. Unfortunately, as we all know, right, it's usually designed for like a short-term fix, right? So there's no long-term vision associated with it, right? You're using data that is usually gathered prior to the project's kickoff. So any data that's created while the project is running doesn't get incorporated into the project, right? So by the time the project's over, it's outdated. And so then again, you don't have the long-term fix that you were hoping for, or nor do you have the sustainable, improvement that you were hoping it was going to create, right? So, and then there's also the obstacles that are associated with the project-based mindset. So, right, as Mary Kate was mentioning, right, you got these multiple systems, right? So you're bound to these legacy systems, some of which have been in the org for decades, right? So let's say you take on a new implementation and you've got one of the latest and greatest systems, but some plant in your network is still running off an instance that was created 3 decades ago, right? Not to mention you bring in the M&As, as Mary Kate mentioned, right? So they're bringing their own data sets, they're bringing their own systems, they're just piling it on top of that tech stack, right? So, and as you just mentioned, right, you can't project your way out of all of these different systems, right? So plus, not to mention the sloppy data that comes with everyone. So it's just, there's a lot of baggage that comes with the project-based mindset as well that we just need to get, off of our shoulders and get over.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Mary Kate, since we talked about your 72 systems, can you give me, some reasoning behind your reduction? Why down to 12? What,
Yep.
Was it outdated? Was it the sloppy data that Josh is talking about? Can you go in on that?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things, and if you think about it, right, it's 72 systems across multiple plants that is really feeding up into corporate. That's the structure of every company, right? And so when you try to compare data from 72 systems across different plants, you're not really getting a good sense of, hey, this is how this plant is running versus this plant, or these are some of the changes you can make. So we just weren't, we felt like we had a ton of data, we weren't using it. And what the ways that we were using data was only specific to that plant. And so, pain points like every month there was an end of the month report, pretty typical, right? That took so much time at the plants. There was designated people to pull these together because they had to put it in a format that would be able to be read across, all of our locations, and that looked different for everyone. So I think visibility and one view of actually seeing this data and making sense of the data was super, super important to us in that project.
Absolutely. And so 72 systems, shoot, let's go down to the 12. You're talking about visibility. They may not communicate with each other. So that essentially means you're exporting all this data into what, Excel?
Yeah, it was pretty much like, right, Excel, huge spreadsheets that someone had made 5-10 years ago and taught the next person how to keep it updated. God forbid this Excel spreadsheet, ever gets so big that we lose it, right? But it was quite literally, I mean, I don't think there was any other instance besides Excel in this scenario that we use, that we would export it to PowerPoint, right, and make it look nice, but it came from Excel, which is just crazy to think about it. But I know that every organization has a number of very large Excel spreadsheets.
And the other risk, I mean, you talked about losing Excel, but what if you lose the employee, right?
Yeah.
People retire, they move on.
And listen, that's even a bigger topic now than it was 5 or 10 years ago. A lot of the work done inside specific plants, we are relying on someone who's had 20, 30 years experience to say, this is the report we pull every month. It's pulled from these 6 different systems, and you might have to click this button 3 times in order to get this reading. And I just happen to know that that Excel sheet is wrong on line 10, right? Because I know where something else exists. So that is super hard as we see more and more people retire and the positions are harder and harder to fill. Huge impetus, I think, for a lot of people behind the One Initiative that we talked about earlier too, is, hey, we're losing a lot of human knowledge. How do we make sure that we're capturing that in the best way possible?
Absolutely. And why don't we just use purpose-built tools? What's the deal with I mean, we do materials management, right? Why don't people use a tool like ours?
So a lot of reasons. One of the reasons being that, we hear people say all the time, right? And, being in industry, we said this too. Shouldn't our ERP system do this? Shouldn't our technology, our IT team be able to do this? And the answer is maybe yes. Maybe they could figure out how to do it after a really long time, after trying to fit a square in a peg, or fit a peg in a square hole. But it's not going to last. It's going to take forever. You're going to have burnout, and ultimately you're going to be trying to use a tool to do something it's not meant to do, which is just not good for anyone involved in the project.
Yeah, absolutely. So everything coming back to data, let's talk about data. Manufacturers, distributors, consumers, more data than ever before. You mentioned endless Excel spreadsheets. The problem is not typically a lack of data, but it's, confusing data. It's the visibility into the data. It's being able to analyze your 50 plants all at the same time. It's our personal and professional lives, kind of depending on data that's difficult to read and oftentimes dirty. Josh, I'm going to come back to you. Talk to me about how, you talked earlier that you have these data optimization projects, and by the time you're done, the data that came in mid-project, which can take years, the data that came in mid-project ruins everything. So talk to me about how organizations are approaching this. Are they still outsourcing and doing data cleansing projects? What's going on?
Oh yeah, it happens all the time. I mean, that's the thing. So a lot of companies have built their own master data management, departments, and, they're doing the best to make sure that, data is compliant, or the data streams that they get are, meeting these predefined parameters, but then they're looking to clean it. But again, they probably don't have the resources. So then they hire an outside consulting firm, or a data cleansing firm comes in. But how do you clean data that's still streaming in that doesn't fit into your predefined parameters, right? It's not possible. So then again, you start to lose some of the insights that normally would have been there if you had just taken, kind of like, as Mary Kate was pointing out, the purpose-built approach, right? And, you got a system that's designed to fix this problem. It's built to fix this problem, right? So you don't need to create all these deep, predefined parameters, because this system already knows exactly what it's looking for to give you the insights right then and there, right? And it can take the constant data stream and keep feeding those new updates to you, so that you're constantly sustainably optimizing your materials, which is what we're talking about, right? Moving
Josh, I was going to add. Yes, I was just going to add to your point, because I'm nodding along with you and thinking about these projects and how in addition to all your points, they're also incredibly resource heavy, right? So you've got a ton of resources that typically come in for the length of the project. That means they're not staying there the whole time, or they're not dedicated to the project the whole time. So they're going to leave, right? And this project, right, tends to get longer and longer, and more money is spent on it. So I just wanted to make sure I added in that point, because it's,
sure.
I think everyone has experienced that, like, hey, this project was supposed to take, 9 months. It's now, 24 months. We've spent triple the budget. And then, by the way, there is an end date when all these resources are going to leave. And do we really know how to do this and still get ROI in 5, 10, 20 years from this?
Oh yeah, to your point, I've been on the consulting side of things. I've seen it. How often projects get extended? It's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the amount of data that's going to come in during a 24-month project or a 36-month project. So I think we've done a pretty decent job of painting the picture of all the pain that people are feeling from projects. Let's talk sustainable approach, right? So project-based work is prevalent. We know that. How do you move to sustainable? How do you make the shift? I think that's what everyone is here to talk about. What are some of the things, Mary Kate, that you're seeing with frontier technologies, changes in hiring? What are you seeing on how companies can begin to be sustainable?
Well, I think number one, right, frontier technologies. So let's talk about that a little bit. We hear a lot about new technology, and I don't think I know we're not all harnessing that technology in our day-to-day lives at work. So things like AI, natural language processing, those type of technologies can help you make sense of your data without your data being perfectly clean. So instead of obsessing over having like the cleanest set of data that you need people to look through all day, every day, how can we actually take technology like AI and natural language processing to make that data sensible for people to use and people to make decisions on? So I think being kind of leader instead of a lagger, right, in harnessing those technologies is super important when you think about a sustainable approach, because you're not going to have people that you can rely on that will have the 20, 30 years of knowledge in your company, right, to say like, this data is wrong and I just know that because I know that because I've worked here for 30 years. You're not going to have that. And so instead of relying on that, how can you turn to different technology to sort of, it'll never be perfect, but what can bridge the gap between that human knowledge that is, quite frankly, leading?
I like that. And something that just kind of popped in my head as you were talking is like the importance to clean data is not going away, but you can understand the dirty data while you're improving your processes. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. So instead of thinking like, gosh, we can't do anything until our data is perfectly 100% clean, you can do things along the way while you're kind of making those quality changes to your data.
Love it. And the ROI has got to be not instant, but I mean, pretty close to, right?
Right. The more you're using this technologies, the quicker you'll get to ROI, and the ROI will be sustainable. That's the difference, right? It's, if you're using these technologies, you're going to make sure that you continue to see ROI right now, immediately, right? First 30 days, 60 days, but also in years to come.
I love it. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, to piggyback off of that, right? So it's not just the frontier technology, right? But it's also the change management that comes with it, right? So like, you can't just buy a technology and think that like, okay, this will, solve all our problems, or this will fix this and we'll have that immediate ROI. No, I mean, the point of the technology is to speed up the execution so that you can constantly improve the strategy, right? But you have to take that long-term, constant improvement, sustainable approach, similar to like exercise, right? If you're an individual, someone that's done this major transformation to their body, right? Through eating healthy, exercise every day. And once they hit their target goal, their target weight, whatever it is, they can't just stop and just expect those results to maintain. Right. So you have to commit to sustaining the process that got them to that point that they wanted to be. And it's kind of like I've always said, in I'm not the first one to come up with this. I'm not by no means like the novel expert when it comes to this, but there's the concept of like optimizing and optimization, right? Where optimization is like this grand status that we're trying to reach. But once you get there, if you don't keep doing the things that you did, it's going to start to fall apart right away. It's going to start to decrease little by little. So optimization or optimizing is a concept that we just have to embrace. It's a process. It's not a state.
I love it. I love optimized versus optimization. That's a great point. It's, congrats, you hit your goal weight. Now, how are you going to stay there? That's really good. Okay. So we know about change management. We know that we need frontier tech. Does that mean we don't need humans? MK, like, this isn't a reduction in workforce. How does it work?
I won't be the one to ever say that or even think that, but right. The way I view AI, and I think the way that most people view AI when you get over like the scary articles that might come up when you Google it, right, is AI is really augmenting humans. And so AI is really freeing up our humans to make better decisions, to have them work on more strategic projects. And let's be honest, right, the AI is computing faster. It can do things, but it can do certain things better than humans do, right? So it can make sure it's keeping a record. It can pour through a massive amount of data in record amount of time. And the more you're interacting with it, right, the better and better it gets. So, at Verison, that's how we're working with our customers, is they're really working with our tool, and our tool uses AI and NLP, and it gets better and better as it continues to learn and mimic how the humans are making decisions or taking the recommendations that the human is making to it. So not replacing humans, but it can do certain things quicker than humans, right? And those are some of the things we don't want to be doing. I don't really know a lot of people who want to stare at a million Excel spreadsheets over and over. So, having AI take the place of that and feeding back out to the human who's ultimately going to make the decision is the goal.
I like that. Yeah. AI is fast. It can churn through the data, but you still make the decision that's right for the company. Right. So it's essentially reallocating the workforce to do, what does the Army say? Work smarter, not harder.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And honestly, as boomers kind of age out and, these older generation of workers, as they start to retire, this new generation of worker, right, they don't want to use Excel spreadsheets. Right.
Because they think there's got to be a better way than this. And there is a better way than that. Right. So they don't want to be in an Excel spreadsheet because they've seen the power of technology in their day-to-day lives, and they know how to harness it, and they're not afraid to harness it.
I love it. Okay. And then what's the gap between those senior workers and the new young workforce? How do you connect the two?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, I think younger workers want to be connected with these experienced workers, right? They don't have, how do you teach someone, here's 30 years of knowledge, right? You can't do it. So having these younger workers and these workers that are aging out, working alongside one another and saying like, hey, look at this technology. What do you think? You've done it in this Excel spreadsheet. Look at how I can do it in this new tool. And making it kind of like a partnership where they're doing that together. It feels like that makes the most sense because, probably the younger is not scared to do it. But the older or the one that's aging out has the experience to say, this is working right, or this is not working right, just with a quick glance, right?
Love it. Yeah. Okay. So that all makes complete sense. And I know that everyone here is not here for a sales pitch, but let's just use what we do as an example of some of the benefits. So talk to me a little bit about why you don't need an Excel spreadsheet. One of the things that we have is global material search. Yep. It's not necessarily a must-have, but tell me how this is moving the needle for companies.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you how through an example, because I think a lot of people on the call will understand this pain point if they've worked in industry. So global material search is a very simple tool that allows you to search for any of your materials across any of your plants at any given time. You might think that this is easy to do, that your ERP system should and maybe kind of does this. But in, most cases, or dare I say all cases, it doesn't really work like that. We're typically relying on calling each other at different plants to say, hey, do you have this part? No, I don't think so. Let me go check. I go check. I don't have it. It's a 4-week lead time. Can't get it. Sorry. So what our system does is we use AI and NLP to bring in all data from across all of our plants to allow you to simply just search. So if you type in red, but it's really maroon, our system's going to know maroon means red. So I know you're looking for this red piece, right? So one of our companies, they're a Fortune 500 packaging company. They were looking for spare parts because they had 2 critical assets fail, and they were doing kind of what I described, the call around, the frantic 3 a.m. call. Hey, do you have this? No, it's a 4-week lead time. Shoot, we're going to have all this unplanned downtime. And we all know unplanned downtime is like the worst phrase to use in a plant, right? So what they did is they pulled up Verison. They used our platform, and they actually found the part at not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 sister plants. So they had the part. They just didn't know they had it because it was in some obscure place. No one knew where it was. But our system, because it took in all their data, knew that they had this part, overnighted it, was able to be up and running the next morning instead of 4 weeks later, which is just, like I said, anyone that has worked in industry will know, what a relief that is to have that capability. That really is this very simple way to show how we're using AI and NLP in our platform.
Yeah, and that's interesting. So I'll go back to the 72 systems you had, because I love that point. Even if you don't go down to 12, if you have 72 systems, it sounds like Verison was the connector between all of them, allowing, it's baffling me that 4 sister plants had this part and none of them knew it.
None of them knew it.
Like,
right?
So this is your red maroon example, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's easy to say, when your data is not perfectly clean, if you type in red and it's saved at these other 4 plants as maroon, it's not going to pop up. So that's just a very simple kind of way to show, the power that AI and NLP can have.
Right. Not to mention, I mean, as you just mentioned, right? And also you didn't need a data cleanse for that, right? Because they didn't clean their data.
Right.
Prior to handing it over and putting it into our system. We took their raw unstructured data and we're able to tell them with their raw unstructured data, hey, this is available at 4 locations. You just got it named 4 different things.
Yep, exactly. No, that's a great point. You can do this type of work. You can see this ROI right away without a full data cleanse like that.
And that's the good thing about, Verison, and I know like a lot of people are hesitant when it comes to frontier technology, early adoption, all this other stuff. They look at tech projects like, oh, this is another lengthy implementation, or I have to do a data cleanse and all this stuff. But that's the thing. It's like you don't with Verison. It's simple,
right?
It's fast. It connects to your existing tech stack, right? Whatever that tech stack is. So whether you got 72 systems or 12, it's going to pull the data from all of them. Right. And you don't need the data cleanse. You can use your dirty data and we can pull the insights from that.
Yeah. And I was just thinking when you were saying that, I think, we talk to different customers and even just working in the industry. I think everyone thinks that their company has the dirtiest data. They're just convinced that it's their company that's just the worst. And I just want to say everyone is in the same boat with dirty data. And I don't think we've ever met anyone with perfect data, and I don't think we ever will.
Right. And
well, maybe someday.
Maybe, exactly. maybe that'll be a goal someday.
Yeah.
And time again, right? We have these customers, they come on, right? And we give them our promise, right? You give us our data, you give us the data, and within 30 days, we'll, start giving you insights. And within 90 days, you're going to start getting these recommendations, and you can start using this thing within 90 days of giving us the data.
Yep.
So no, I love it. And actually so it's time for some Q&A. And the reason I'm jumping to Q&A is because the first question kind of directly ties with this 90-day ROI thing. So Mary Kate, I'll throw it to you first, and Josh, jump in if you want to add on. But the first question is, how do I invest in external technology when cost savings is the top of all of our initiatives?
I think you find a purpose-built solution that can get you cost savings in AKA ROI in 30, 60, 90 days, right? And so a place like Verison will guarantee that, but purpose-built solutions in general are so focused on giving you that ROI in a short span of time, and things like not needing the data cleanse and being able to meet you where you're at with your data is going to allow you to be able to sell back to your boss or your boss's boss that, yeah, we are going to see the ROI almost immediately, right? Just give me 60 days and we'll see the ROI.
Love it.
And to
And that,
piggyback off that, I would say an investment is needed for cost saving when you are looking into a system that gives you sustainable cost saving opportunities and sustainable risk reduction opportunities. Right. So we're taking both excess cost off the table as well as excess risk off the table in the chance that, oh, do I have this part? This line went down. Can we replace it? Right. Does someone else in the network have it? Can they overnight it?
Mm-hmm.
thanks. Yeah, that's great. And kind of along the same lines, but in a different vein, I guess. So the question is, we just implemented an ERP materials management module. Doesn't that solve my material problem?
I would say no, unless it was specifically built to do that from a group of experts that know exactly what they're doing around materials management.
Right. I would agree with that, because I think probably most ERP tools have that extension or the claim to do that, I would, in my experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we do, just to call out, just to make this very clear, we work very closely with, all the ERP systems. We have an SAP partnership. So, it's not like we're saying that we're taking over ERPs, or they want to work with us because we're able to provide a really clean and simple way to optimize your material inventory, right? And they're just simply not built to do that. So we have a partnership with SAP, and we work with, all the different ERP systems out there.
Right, and that's to your point. I mean, that's the thing is, some of these ERP vendors, as great as their systems are and as necessary as those systems are, we'll never take away from that, are recognizing that they don't do it all, and they are extending their partner network into the purpose-built world in order to say, hey, we know that we don't do this. If you're interested in it, they do it really well, and it works with our system really well.
Exactly.
Love it. All right, next question, and Josh, I think this is probably for you based on your consulting experience, but MK, feel free to jump in. When implementing a new technology, I'm worried my team already has too many systems to work in. I don't want to add another to their list.
Mm-hmm.
Well, see, the good thing about our system is it's not particularly time consuming, right? I mean, we're giving people results that are using it 2 to 4 hours a week, right? And then they're seeing true results. But I mean, if you think about just your everyday life, right? How many applications do you use on a daily basis, just in your personal life? And then even think back now, to work. I mean, we use Slack, we use Teams, we use Gmail, we use Zoom, right? We use Salesforce, we use just about every single business application you can think of, right? Numerous times throughout the day. And we still invest in new technology. We still add these things on because we realize that once you see the value of them, this is something that no longer becomes, is it a nice to have? It just suddenly becomes, oh, we really need this if we want to see sustainable results.
Right. And using that global search feature, it's connected in, right, with your ERP system. You're using it as you could use it as a backup or use your ERP as a backup. It's not like global search means you can't search inside your ERP system. I just want to make sure that's clear. You can use both. It's just, in our instances, it tends, because we're using AI and NLP, you're going to be able to see all of those results in much more quickly.
Right. And to piggyback on that, I think it really comes down to ease of use, right? If you have a system that's really easy to use, people are going to adopt it, right? I mean, that's the thing. They're going to want to use that system.
Yeah, and that's like the example I was talking about with that Fortune 500 packaging company. So they are talking about actually setting up a few kiosks in each one of their plant that literally just runs Verison for the global search capability. Because people, they added, after that happened, they added like a ton of users across, I forget what the number was, but let's call it maybe 100 users across all their different plants, and they want to have these kiosks available because it is just so easy to use. I think that is really, really important.
Excellent, excellent. All right, well, that does it for the question portion of the webinar. Thank you to both of you for taking time today. I thought it was a great discussion. To everyone on the call, we'll be sending out a recording of the webinar, as well as a finalized report of the survey that we mentioned, and a link to our resource center for additional content that's similar to what we discussed today. Thank you again for your time, and have a wonderful holiday.
Thanks, everyone.